On today's show, let's talk about Cavs trade values, and we'll also look ahead to Cavs Heat. That's all coming up today on Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. I'm Chris Manning, covering the Cavs and the NBA at large for places like Diamond UPROXX, SB Nation's Fear the Sword, and the just-launched Just B-Ball show. That man over there is Evan Dammarell, the proprietor of Down Euclid. You can see the logo up there on his hat. This episode is, as always...
wrong figure.
That's right. Produced by the one and only Jake Stevens, and the music you heard on the way in is from our friends at Astro Radio. All right, today's show, segment 1, we're going to dive into the worth of Isaac Okoro if you were to consider using him in the trade market. Segment 2, we're going to pitch what we think the Cavs' best, or what their best, the trade package they should be most willing to offer that's the best would be. In segment 3, what to watch for in Tuesday's Cavs Heat game, which does have some Eastern Conference standing implications. Evan, let's start with Isaac Okoro. Here's just going to be my official stance on Okoro trades. I would not deal him for anything that is a rental. I think like Gary Trent Jr. trades. I think like Josh Richardson trade, Josh Hart trade, like any of the trades that are realistic for the Cavs at this deadline. I don't think makes sense for what Okoro has looked like the last month or so. He has looked like a better player, a more confident player, a more comfortable player, a good enough shooter where you're like, okay, like you can live with some of the looks he's taking and feel a little more comfortable that a good number of them are going to go in. I think he is a guy I would be very, very surprised if he's moved the deadline. I don't really see the upside of dealing him at this point in time. We'll see how he looks the rest of the year. We'll see how this goes going forward. I don't see like a deal that's realistic right now that makes sense to put him on the table for.
So I agree with you. I don't think you should sell low on Isaac Okoro if you're the Cavs, but I do want to just go all the way back to the summer when friend of the program, Matt Moore, wrote about this and said that he had heard the Cavs just aren't actively looking to move Isaac Okoro because they are firm believers in his potential and what he can be as a player. And I think the Cavs being patient and pragmatic and not really like rushing Isaac during his development, especially just in this awkward situation that he's in, has kind of paid off for them right now. Because as Chris noted, he's not without his flaws, Isaac Okoro, but like he is competent enough offensively that he can provide you 8 to 10 points when you need him to, but he's not going to be like demanding shot opportunities or like muddying up things for like Mitchell, Garland, even Mobley or Allen as well. And defensively is just where he is premier for the Cavs. He's their best perimeter defender at this point. I think if you watch a lot of these games, like he shut down Jalen Brunson when they played the Knicks not too long ago. He played very good defense on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander until Alexander kind of erupted. Okoro's just been the premier point of attack defender for the Cavs up to this point, and he continues to do so. And if you're Cleveland, why rush to trade him? And also, it's the same lane of like they don't have to rush to extend him either. They still have that luxury of one more year of his rookie contract to evaluate things. And with how expensive this Cavs team is going to become over the next few years, like Darius Garland's maximum extension kicks in next summer. I would assume Evan Mobley's going to get a pretty penny too, and like that's going to be an option as well for Cleveland. But you have to be smart with how you structure these deals. And GB Bickerstaff kind of talked about this today, Monday rather, during practice, that you don't see a lot of super teams forming anymore because you see teams being reliant on maybe grabbing a couple stars and then backloading it with cheap, cost-controlled talent. And maybe to make a football analogy, like you see a lot of teams succeeding right now because like you have the quarterback on a rookie scale deal, but you maximize the assets elsewhere to make sure that rookie scale quarterback succeeds. And I'm not saying Isaac Okoro is that level of a player, but it's a similar process where the Cavs really went in on a lot of their star pieces. Now they have to find really strong complementary pieces that are cheaper. And Isaac Okoro is cheaper at this point and probably better than anything you can get on the market, unless like the Raptors are just tripping over themselves when I offer up OG Anunoby for Isaac Okoro and no draft picks.
If that happens, you should call that trade in. There is a 0%. There's a better
a
chance,
less than
Evan,
zero
that I'm
chance
gonna wake up at 6. I'm gonna wake up at 6'5" tomorrow and be able to dunk. Then Isaac Okoro is gonna be acquired for OG Anunoby and no picks.
Yeah. So to give you guys an idea, I think Chris and I are on the same page. If it's like a player like Anunoby or a player that just the Cavs would be foolish not to trade for, and the price is Isaac Okoro, you definitely pay that price at the end of the day. But when you're looking at it now, Cleveland should just remain patient, pragmatic, see where his development goal goes from here. If, let's say, he's a non-factor in the playoffs, or there's some things that just become concerning towards the end of the season, maybe reapproach trading him this summer or something like that. But for now, it just doesn't make sense to fully cash in your assets when you need to keep the powder dry for this summer. And the Cavs just don't have a ton of assets to work with to begin with. So the premier one is probably Isaac Okoro in terms of intrigue. It's Karis LeVert in terms of the contract, but I don't agree with the thought process of just shipping Okoro for nothing. Like, I shared some hypotheticals from Bleacher Report that just included Okoro's like filler at that point, and they were pretty ludicrous. Like, offering up Jetty Osman and Isaac Okoro for Josh Richardson would be, wouldn't say a fireable offense, but certainly a questionable move by Kobe Altman.
I think if you watch the Cavs enough, it kind of, you see what the trust is in Okoro, and you see just like, I think that he's better. And you look at the numbers, it tells you like, okay, like there is a guy that is imperfect here that has struggled. But I think you just go back and look at the numbers in the season, or excuse me, like just the last couple of weeks, and just like the film from the last like month. And that's a guy who's improved and has been a good player. Contract wise, he's this year making $7 million, age 22 season. Next year, when he's 23, he'll make 8.9, and then in 24-25, he has a qualifying offer that year. That's that'll be 11.8. That's a team that last year of his rookie deal. This should might get picked up, and then the year after that, he hits RFA. Would not surprise me at all if he is just run up into RFA just based on the other stuff they've going on, unless there is like a very team friendly extension that is still that is found with him. The other thing worth noting is about a month ago, Jake Fisher from Yahoo, when he right after Donovan Mitchell scored 71, and he wrote a column about how the Cavs are looking for an upgrade in the wing. One of the nuggets in that story was that Okoro wants to stay in Cleveland. He has quite a strong desire, end quote, to remain in Cleveland and work with and be a part of this young core. And there is the question of how long you let that unfold. When do you say, okay, we have to try to figure some of this out? The Cavs, I mean, I think have put a lot, like there is trust in there from him, from JB Bickerstaff and some other things that kind of lead you to think that they do also kind of match some of that belief and whatnot. But I would be, of the guys that you could conceivably get traded that aren't like the untouchables, which is Allen, Mobley, Garland, and Mitchell. Like, those are the four guys that I think are 100% off the table. Like, everyone, there's other guys I'd be very surprised if they're traded, but Okoro's kind of near the list of guys I'd be surprised if dealt at this trade. Like, I would be like, it would take something that is not kind of out in the ether right now to make me think he's going to go anywhere.
And sure, like the Cavs are a team that the day plays with their cards very close to their vest, and again, like maybe they swing a trade out of nowhere that we don't expect, but they're just so asset poor at this point that it doesn't make sense to maybe work within the margins of what you have to maybe make a marginal move that's just not really worth the upside of what Isaac Okoro provides you at this point. And that's, I mean, if you're listening at this point, you somehow skip ahead of this segment, that's just basically the summary of the segment, but we'll see how it goes, obviously. But again, like the bar is pretty high. If the Cavs, let's say like a team approaches them saying like, listen, we're willing to offer you a player, but we need like a first round caliber player. And I think Okoro is that, but it would give me pause on what Cleveland is getting in return for it, because like you'd have to be hard pressed to find a guy who, again, like Chris said, wants to be here and more or less probably fits in better with like your future timeline, because he's so comfortable with everything around you that it just wouldn't make a lot of sense to maybe just go make a win now move for a guy who will probably be a clunky fit when he comes to Cleveland.
Yeah, or again, it's like a rental, and like I think there is something to be said of not like going all in on this year in terms of rentals, and there are other trades you can make that are not that. There are other guys you could trade, notably that might be rentals anyway for you, that you could go swap them out for another rental that fits better and then try to keep them via bird rates and whatever. But I think trading a guy you have under contract for a little bit longer under the old, that was in a deal that was made under the old CBA, which like maybe let's see what advantages that has when we see how that goes forward. I think that is kind of worth noting. Okay, we're going to go on a break now. We're going to come back. We're going to look at what we think the best offer the Cavs could put on the table is, or at least the one that would kind of make the most sense. Again, the deadline is getting closer. I'm sure we'll have more trade slop to talk about as we go. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. This year, the only app you need at your Super Bowl party is FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. We're really excited about our new betting partner for Locked On because they're the #1 sportsbook in America. That's FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features to make betting on sports fun and easy. Download FanDuel now so you can bet Super Bowl 57 with a no-sweat first bet. You'll get up $3,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel lets you bet on everything from the money line to point spreads to who will score a touchdown. Right now, they have the Eagles as 1.5-point favorites. They have Travis Kelce, the Chiefs tight end, the Cleveland Heights native, at -125 to score a touchdown. That is the best odds of any player to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl on Sunday. Look, best of all, you can get paid your winnings instantly. Look, FanDuel's a great app. It's really easy to use. It has everything I'm looking for in a sportsbook app. And look, if you're an NBA fan, you're listening to the show, they offer no sweat same-game parlays on Thursday for TNT games, if that's something that interests you. So, join FanDuel today at FanDuel.com/lockedon to claim your no-sweat first bet on Super Bowl 57. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And Locked On. All right, back here, Locked On Cavs podcast, Chris Manning and Evan Dammarell. Evan, best trade package, finish the sentence for me. The best trade package the Cavs can reasonably put out there is what?
Do I have to give like a player for this package or just feasibly?
No,
what the
like
best
you're
thing
saying,
they
hey,
can
no,
offer?
like best they can offer. I'm not saying go tell me who they can offer this for. I want you to tell me what are the things the Cavs can offer and that is the most value they can put out there and reasonably maybe should put out there in a trade at this trade deadline.
Okay, that's a lot less on the spot. It'd be a combination of Karis LeVerts and second-round picks, I'd say. I mean, what little you have left. I know they have future picks from Golden State and Milwaukee. If you want to try and just keep your seconds and maybe keep, again, the powder dry for the summer if another move materializes, then after that, it's a combination of LeVert, Jetty Osman, second-round picks, and then maybe guys like Dylan Windler, just because that's a contract that is just eating up a roster spot right now. It's something of that.
It absolutely is Karis LeVert, I think. I think you go the Bucks 2025 second, you have the Lakers 2026 second. Like, that is not a ton, but you could see how this market kind of views things and see if that nets you anything. I don't think we know right now as we're recording on January 30th, as people are listening to this on the last day of January 2023, exactly kind of what the market is going to yield or like what the prices for certain things are. I don't really have an idea of that right now. It's kind of unclear to me of like what anything is actually going to cost. That in itself kind of makes this an interesting kind of exercise. Like in the Cavs, I think will probably, if history is any indication, probably hold pretty firm on what they're going to offer. Mm-hmm. I think two things kind of maybe hurt Cleveland in theory here, Evan. Number one, can't trade any firsts, and that would obviously be the currency to kind of grease some of the palms on these trades a little bit. Can't trade a first until draft night. We've talked about that a lot. Donovan Mitchell trade kind of took that off the table for now, and that's fine. You got Donovan Mitchell 10 times out of 10 worth it. The other thing is that I don't think they will do it, but I bet you they've had a meeting about is Kevin Love's contract worth using in this scenario. It is a lot of money on an expiring contract. Expiring contracts are not worth the same thing that they were a decade ago or 5 years ago in the trade market. Teams are not necessarily just looking for clear salary relief anymore. But Kevin Love is a big number that you could absorb things with. And I mean, we've had people on the YouTube channel, like in our Discord, whatever, kind of saying like, okay, could you turn two players into one with Kevin Love's number? I'm sure that they have had a meeting and discussed this and thought about this, or what Kevin Love in some seconds could net you on the market if you went out using that as an offer.
Yeah, and shout out to Big Mike. He's a regular listener, a guy who supported us for the longest time. He actually asked me this on the Discord server. If you want to join, let one of us know. But he floated the idea of the Cavs trying to get, I believe, Josh Richardson and Doug McDermott for Kevin Love and multiple second-round picks. And like, yeah, in theory, like on paper, that makes a lot of sense. But And sure, it's easy to downplay the significance of what Kevin Love brings to the table for this Cavs squad just because he's struggling with back spasms right now, but that thumb injury is clearly affecting his shooting form, and he just doesn't look right, and he's not really giving you much if he's not providing you any shooting. But I think it's the intangible stuff. Like, one, it's a veteran that JB uses as a conduit because they have like a mutual respect for one another. They've been around each other since the beginning of Love's NBA career, and they have a relationship that works. And like, that's a valuable asset if you're the coaching staff, because you have a veteran voice that guys listen to. And yeah, they dog on him for his old age and things like that, but like, it's a guy they respect at the end of the day because he has championship pedigree, he has championship experience, he is an old head who has a lot of NBA records and accolades under his belt too, and is probably a future Hall of Famer at this point. And it's in the ether. I believe Chris Fedor was the first to report it first, but I'm sure you've heard it, Chris. I've heard it myself personally. But like, Kevin Love is pretty interested in the idea of retiring in Cleveland, or at least finishing his career in Cleveland. And so, yeah, he'll be a free agent this upcoming summer. And I think the Cavs can probably bring him back from maybe part of their mid-level exception, or maybe they sign into a vet min deal if like there's just nothing that they can do and there's no market for Kevin Love out there. But I just think you have to be mindful of the fact that this is a very young Cavs squad. And sure, Donovan Mitchell is the leader on and off the court at the end of the day for this team, but Kevin Love is a key piece in terms of like that veteran leadership aspect. And you don't want to rock the boat too much if you do that, especially when games start to get tighter and when the playoffs start to come close. Like, Tuesdays, we're going to talk about the Heat game for the last segment, but like this Heat game, Donovan Mitchell called it like a playoff caliber game, but like having a guy like Kevin Love to maybe keep guys steady and keep guys even keeled when the pressure's tightest and everything else, because he's seen a lot of these situations and scenarios before, will help a lot in the long run. And I just think, again, having a veteran guy who is like a key piece to that 2016 squad still here is a good morale booster for the team and fans. And I just think you don't want to really burn that bridge necessarily with Love, because it's a bit of a different situation like with Rubio, because I'm sure people point out to that, like, oh, they traded Ricky Rubio, but Ricky Rubio came back. I wonder if it's just the Cavs had a better relationship and they're willing to let Rubio recover and offer him more money despite the ACL tear. But we'll see how it goes. But I don't agree with using Kevin Love's contract as an expiring, unless, like, again, it's just like an insane offer comes on the table and they're like, yeah, we want Kevin Love for it. Yeah, then you have to consider it. But I don't think you want to rock the boat too much at the end of the day.
Look, I don't think they'll do it. I don't know if I would do it either. I think his struggles of late, I think certainly color kind of where he's at right now. I think that you have to kind of wonder like what he's going to look like, if he's going to be healthy, when he's going to be healthy. That's very vague. We'll see, if he plays Tuesday, if he plays Thursday, when he comes back, what he looks like and how he fits into the rotation. I think that's like a kind of a question of like what this all will kind of look like with Dean Wade back and JB Bickerstaff having that full assortment of players. I'm curious to know like what kind of deal he's looking for, what he wants to accomplish at the end of his career. Does he want to like maybe just like the Cavs are going to be, I think, aiming to be a title contender going forward? Does that satiate him enough? Is there another challenge? Like what everyone kind of wants here, I think it's kind of an interesting question. And the Cavs have in the past, they have at times been unsentimental. This is not the same front office groups, but there is like, I mean, they traded Anderson Varejao. Like
they let Tristan Thompson walk. Like they've
made like every team has done this, but like I would say I don't think this is the case where this is headed. I don't think like Kevin is at the point where Andy was circa 2016 and like clearly just not like helping you win basketball games anymore. But the thing I always have to remind myself as well that at trade deadline season is that sentimentality does not stop good teams from making the trades that will make them better.
For sure.
That is not, again, I don't necessarily think they're trading Kevin Love. I'm just saying I don't think like if it comes down to like sentimentality and attachment to him in some way, that would stop them from doing a deal. I would say Karis LeVert is by far the most likely player to be traded at the deadline. I don't think Love is. I would be surprised if Love is dealt. That's where I'm at with this.
And also, if you just look at it from what the Cavs need, if Kevin Love's thumb is better after this little bit of a sabbatical he's questionable heading into the Heat game, of course, but like the All-Star break's definitely going to help too. It's just his thumb's recovery. Like if he comes back and he's a more competent shooter and like he finds balance with Rubio and the starters, like he gives you something you need. And your Varejao point's a really good one. Like Andy had torn his Achilles. He was cooked physically. Like you saw it if you're a Cavs fan in the 2016 finals and Steve Kerr tried to play him and the Cavs like just took advantage of the fact that Andy was a step slow and like just is not a good defensive player. And I think there's a sentimentality aspect. I think it's just like the culture and maybe the chemistry aspect too. Like I don't know of how this Cavs team would respond if it's just like a guy that is kind of one of the conduits for them culturally at the end of the day. Like kind of does keep the Cavs steady and kind of help out in a lot of ways that we probably aren't fully aware of just because we have limited interactions with him as members of the media, and everyone who's listening to this and us only see him so much when he's playing and everything else. So we don't have a full perspective on it, but I'm sure he has a lot more value within the locker room than maybe people are letting on.
Yeah, and look, like I think like maybe that anyone you would trade for is like is it a guarantee that like even Kevin Love, depending on how things shake out, like is he in like the final 8-man rotation on certain nights? I think it's possible that like you could have guys that even someone you maybe trade for like isn't necessarily like playing crunch minutes for you. I think that's very possible based on with what the Cavs kind of have to offer. Evan, let's go into one more break.
Let me just say, like, the Heat keep signing Udonis Haslem to contracts and he doesn't play. And I'm not saying Kevin Love's going to get that kind of treatment, but like having a veteran that the guys respect and maybe like you're willing to sacrifice a roster spot for it does mean a lot. But if you have a functional player at this point, it makes more sense to keep him than not.
Yeah. All right. Come out back after the break. We're going to talk about Cavs Heat right after this. All right, last segment, Locked on Cavs podcast. Chris Manning and Evan Dammarell. Evan, here's I have two big things I'm looking for in this game schematically. We should note at the top that this game does matter for East standings. The Cavs enter this game 2.5 games up on the Heat in the East standings. You win here, you're up 3.5. That would be a really positive thing heading into a pretty manageable slate of games. Their run of games pre the All-Star break is a very good opportunity to go 6-3, 7-2, something like that. And go on a little bit of a run here. The Cavs also down the stretch, based on winning percentage, have one of the easier schedules in the league. So we'll see kind of what maybe this could springboard them into something and pushing back up towards that top 3 that they've fallen behind a little bit. That would kind of be an interesting subplot if they can kind of go into the All-Star break strong. Okay, number one thing I'm looking for. How the Cavs defend Jimmy Butler, and specifically how Okoro looks in that assignment and what their other options are if Okoro does get into foul trouble. Which like could happen considering year over year Butler is one of the elite players in the league at getting fouled and getting to the free throw line. He's like an absolute menace when he drives. I think that little matchup. I think did they give it to Stevens after that? Just like do they have to try Karras on him at stretches? Like do they try Dean Wade on him? Whatever they do, I can't wait to watch just how they navigate Jimmy Butler. That is my number one thing, and that is like a very specific thing. It is a very like. Jimmy doesn't take the threes that kind of contorts the Cavs, but if it's a close game and you're dealing with him, that is, again, we talked about this on the Monday show. I am curious to see how they will kind of navigate the whole Jimmy Butler experience.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how they navigate it. Like Butler is listed as questionable as of recording this and heading into Tuesday.
I swear, like if we go through this year and the games we had the Clippers game the other night that we covered, and the Warriors game. Like there were no one
the
played.
Pelicans game,
Luka,
the Mavericks game. Hey, Giannis played once, and LeBron played. So
yeah, then Giannis didn't play in the other one. Like it would just bum me out, It would just bum me out. That. I'm also just like a Jimmy Butler guy, which is like one of my most toxic things about me is that I'm like just Jimmy Butler, love you, but
Chris has a homewrecker. Pass it on.
I just love look, man. Shout out to Jimmy. That guy rules. If he doesn't play, that'll be a bummer. That will take away from the stakes of this game, and that in itself will just be a bummer. And like I have a buddy who went to the Sunday game and is going Tuesday, and he's going Thursday, and I will be very bummed.
Friend of the program coming to Tuesday's game as well, Dave Zavak.
That's true. Yeah, David doesn't listen to podcasts, so I don't.
He's been on.
Love Dave.
So
yeah. I don't know. It doesn't listen to shows.
He recorded from his man cave with his Kyrie Irving jersey in the background.
That's true. But okay, so Jimmy Butler's questionable. Gabe Vincent's questionable. Duncan Robinson is out. Omer Yurtseven is out. Jamal Cain is out. Nikola Jovic is out. Okay, so if Butler doesn't play, I will be very bummed, but that's all just takes away a lot of the stakes of this game to me. Some of the fun of this game.
Well, a glass half full approach, Bam Adebayo is going to play, and like that's going to be a fun matchup for Evan Mobley and Jared Allen at the end of the day. Like, that'll be. I agree with you though. Like if Jimmy Butler does play, how the Cavs navigate defending him and just kind of avoiding this turning into a true grind fest, because like that's what the Heat want. Like they want to grind the Cavs into dust and maybe make this like an early 2000s kind of scoring game where it's like 83, 88 of the day. Like they want to like grind this out because the Heat struggle shooting wise, especially without Duncan Robinson out there. I know they have Tyler Harrow still, but like they aren't a good 3-point shooting team. They're kind of like an interesting foil to maybe just like the Clippers, but with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard, or even the Grizzlies on Thursday as well, just like a different defensive assignment. But it's going to have some implications to it because I think the Cavs are at least aware at this point. Like this game will carry some weight because the Heat are right behind you in the Eastern Conference standings. Like Donovan Mitchell said after practice on Monday that you can win 4 in a row in the Eastern Conference and be in second place, or you could lose 4 in a row and stumble all the way down to like 10th place in the Eastern Conference. That's how tight things are right now. And that it's interesting enough that the Cavs have a lot of these high stakes games in January and kind of the doldrums of the season. And Mitchell said it's an interesting change of pace, and I agree with that sentiment. Like it's an interesting change of pace because a lot of teams can kind of sleepwalk through this, or they kind of like start shutting things down towards the end of the season because they shift focus to the playoffs. But like the Cavs are kind of in a precarious spot. Like they started the season 8-1, and they're just like a touch above 500 after that point. Just if you look at the grand scheme of their whole record, so we'll see how it goes, but I think it's going to be a playoff-like game. And I wonder, just because Mitchell was the one who put that out in the ether, if we're going to kind of see a performance from Donovan Mitchell, especially because like Jimmy Butler's going to spend the whole night like matching Mitchell minute for minute or blow for blow. Like that's going to be a fun matchup between those two. Like Butler on defense and Don on offense. Like that's going to be kind of sicko stuff to watch, and it's going to probably be high stakes. It's going to be entertaining. It won't be like the Celtics game on ESPN a couple months ago, but it's still going to be fun nevertheless.
You're right to maybe say this is going to be like a grinded dust game. The Miami is 4th in defense in the year, according to Cleaning the Glass. The Cavs are 3rd. They're separated by half a point per 100 possessions. The Cavs, meanwhile, are 12th in offense. The Heat are 25th. So the Heat have not been a particularly good offensive team. They're actually 27th over the last 2 weeks, which is rough. They're 6 points below league average in offense over the last 2 weeks per Cleaning the Glass. So that at least maybe gives some favorability for the Cavs and kind of in that sense. Evan, the other thing, and you mentioned Bam Adebayo, and that's where to go. It's how the Cavs defend the hero Bam pick and roll. This is something. There's a really good story that I read in the Miami Herald that I'll link below, but something Miami has talked about in this, they talked about Eric Spoelstra and these guys talked about in the story, was wanting to run this more, and it's been like a highly effective look this year. It's like in the article, it was like 1.25 per 100 possessions. Like they're getting points out of it. That is an awesome number for a pick and roll combo. You know, like I'm expecting Okoro, you know, on Jimmy. Mm-hmm. So when Hero's in the game, is that going to be Donovan Mitchell, you know, containing the point of attack? What does that look like? I think that's kind of interesting to watch. And just it's seeing Bam go against Jared Allen, go against Evan Mobley. Those are different kind of centers than maybe we've seen them go against at times. And Bam's having like an all-star caliber. I just want to see how they specifically defend that action, how that kind of looks against a very good Cavs defense, and just how, especially at the point of attack part of it, I'm very interested in.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Like I'm a huge fan of Bam Adebayo as a player, and like how the Heat utilize him is certainly fascinating just because his skill set is unique, and he's been part of this pseudo revolution for the big man. Like I think Nikola Jokic is clearly like the apex of what you have in terms of just like a playmaking big man who is, but like in Bam's case, much better defensively and can provide you some 3-point shooting, but the playmaking aspect is huge. And I remember back when Larry Nance Jr. and like Kevin Love and Andre Drummond was still on the roster, and like Jared Allen wasn't even in the picture yet for the Cavs. Like I asked JB and I did like a one-on-one with him, like, because you saw a lot of success with like the Heat utilizing it in the bubble. And I asked him, like, do you think this is the way the NBA is going to go with bigs? He's like, absolutely. He's just like, bigs are kind of being phased out because of 3-point shooting and finding ways to have them be more involved in the offense. And whether it's through playmaking, shooting, defense, obviously at the end of the day, but like switchability too. Like Bam is really good switchable wise. And like, I think you could see some him like defending in like Donovan on the perimeter or something like that at times too. But like, he's going to be all over the place for Miami tomorrow night. And I think it's going to be an interesting assignment for Evan Mobley, especially Jared Allen as well. But I think Mobley's going to probably draw the assignment of Bam more often than not, just because of like how multifaceted he is as a player. But like, this is going to be a fun game. I think like if you are a true hoops enthusiasts, this is a game you're going to enjoy. If you're just a casual fan who wants to watch high fashion exploding offense, that's what I was looking for. You're going to be kind of disappointed because, as Chris noted, the Heat and the Cavs kind of in a dead heat in terms of defensive efficiency. And so it's going to be who can grind less who at this point and maybe walk away the victor at this juncture.
Yes. All right. That is going to be it for this episode of Locked On Cavs. On the Cavs injury report, by the way, Dylan Windler out. Kevin Love probable per the last injury report. Thanks again for making us your first listen every day. This episode was produced by Jake Stevens. Now, for your second listen, check out Game to Game NBA. Every moment, every top performance, every result. Locked On Game to Game covers every game from across the NBA with local analysis only Locked On can deliver. Follow Game to Game on Locked On NBA. That is available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts.